on YouTube. This meeting is being live streamed. Awesome. And also we need to be recording. Here we go. We are recording and the recording is in progress. Now I can close
Ever
this
since we started
window.
to do this, all my friends have turned into little green dots.
They have.
Yeah, but I love looking at them. Hi,
Hi. What? I don't even know what you mean by the green dots.
looking at the little green dot.
Oh,
Yeah.
that singular green dot up there.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Um,
Singular dot.
I thought you meant like green ellipses.
No drama dots, just the one dot.
Drama dots. Okay. So drama dirty. Come on in closer so then the mic can pick us up equally.
Hi, Mike.
Mike. Mike's our good friend and Mike is here today. It is our microphone, which again, because I can't remember which one it's on. I'm sorry.
It's the
people.
Yeti stereo
Okay.
microphone.
I haven't working well. A few minutes
Okay,
ago.
now test the
Sweet.
microphone.
Man, stop talking to me for a moment, please. Let's see, is it picking up our voices? Yes, and then the light is solid, okay?
Good.
All right, great. And test. Okay, sorry everyone, if anyone is watching this crazy live stream YouTube getting started thing. I think I might rethink my invitation. Because this is typically it's the Thriving Live on Tuesdays at 2, and we're already at 2:03 and we're working on all these glitches. And that's all okay because, you know, we're just humans and we get to make mistakes and we get to make them often and fast and learn from them. So I actually don't think that there is anything. I mean, I don't think failure is like really a big deal thing because the way I look at it is just an opportunity to learn from
No
the
failure.
experience.
No failure, no post-it notes.
No post-it notes, no learning, no, a whole lot of things. So welcome everyone to Thriving Live. It is Tuesday at 2. It is Tuesday, July 12th here in Great Barrington. We are here from my studio again on Railroad Street. And as usual, you might notice that things have been moving around. They usually do because it's a working studio and I'm here a lot and things are thriving. Everything's thriving. It's pretty amazing, eh?
It is.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen this guy before, he's my beloved lover, my partner, my sometimes studio manager, producer of the Antarctica Temporalis project, which we're working on. We're getting ready
That's
to get that launched
amazing.
and get that out into the world.
Going to be so amazing.
It's going to be so amazing. It's going to be so amazing. So, yeah, so that's the quick intro part. And now we're going to move into the pleasure first part because that'll help me at least get grounded in here and you too, hopefully, and anyone who's watching. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I sometimes come in with a lot of energy and I'm kind of all over the place and I'm kind of like, what are we going to talk about today? I have no idea. We're going to wing it and just see what comes up. And in order to get quiet and see what comes up, I need to get myself grounded first. So here we are. We're going to do that. And would you like to lead it or would you like me to lead it today?
Oh, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to invite you to stand. And
Go off screen if I back up.
okay.
Then I'll just talk louder so Blue Yeti can hear us. That's the name of the microphone.
I see why you said it's blue. It says blue on it, but it's a black microphone. So that's why I was very confused. Glad we got that cleared up. Okay. So let me move the chair. So for our warm up today, actually, I don't usually call it a warm up, but it feels like a warm up.
That's a nice way to think about it. Everybody's used to doing warm-ups before they work out. Pleasure first is like doing your warm-up before you do the thing, whatever the thing is.
Whatever the thing is. Okay, so just ground yourself and notice just feel your feet on the floor. Allow your weight to get heavy into your feet. You can even bend your knees a little bit. You can soften your shoulders a little bit. Let your gut hang out. Loosen your throat and your chest. You know, it's not like mountain pose where everything's engaged. It's sort of like the opposite. It's like I'm a human that's connected by all kinds of things, and I'm just going to let the weight of my whole body settle into my feet. Settle into my feet. I can feel it most in my heels at the moment, but I want to try to get it even across the bottoms of my feet. Almost like it's a rectangle with 4 corners. So I'll try to balance out the weight in the front on the balls of my feet and the weight on my heels without locking up my knees. Notice that I definitely want to do that. So I'm going to just keep telling myself loose, loose, just hang loose. Let it be easy. Nothing held, nothing solid or still. So you might notice that in order to have your weight remain on the whole bottom of your foot, you may need to find subtle shifts in your weight. I'm noticing like a pendulum swing, not a back and forth, but like a round and round swing. Which is kind of interesting. Never noticed that before.
Something that helps me when I'm doing it is I draw my attention away from the feet for a minute, leave them there with the weight, and then I find out if I can feel my arms hanging in my shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So, because they're pretty long bones.
Yeah.
They're substantial. Have you ever seen a human arm bone? It's a big thing.
Uh-huh.
There's 2 of them with hands and fingers. So if I feel, I let myself notice the feeling of gravity pulling the fingers, pulling the arm, pulling the arm and the shoulder. Sometimes it means I make some micro adjustments in the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can bring my attention, back down to my feet that I was centering in before, and notice if anything's changed down there while I was thinking about my shoulders. And then find out if I can feel that grounding in the feet that you talked about. And I have to say also, I'm a little flat-footed, so sometimes my rectangle on my feet is more of a tripod where the heel is like one big fat point.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a point under my big toe and over by my little toe. So they balance out, and then the arms hang down. And I usually find myself making a few adjustments in that, and then I feel pretty grounded.
Mm.
And I just started speaking over your pleasure first, but there you go.
No, thank you for reminding all of us to notice like the other parts of our body and where we can feel the gravity pulling, and especially noticing that in my arms and in my shoulders and my throat. Just noticing the places that want to like grip and hold, and moving the attention all around the body so that you can check in like, am I holding in my throat? Am I holding in my chest? Am I clenching my butt cheeks? And any place that I might be, just allowing it, just noticing it, and then trying to just relax it. Let it be easy. Take a few slow, deep breaths, counting in for 4 and exhaling through your mouth with 6 beats. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more. 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now allow yourself to just sort of move around a bit in your space. Allow your limbs to move a bit. And start wiggling your fingers. And then you can wiggle your hands. And start shaking your wrists a little bit, round and round, up and down, however it feels good. And then from your shoulders, allow your forearms, not your shoulders, your elbows, your forearms and your hands to just move about, shaking them up, feeling things change. And then from your shoulders, include your whole arm, both arms. Lift their shoulders up and let them move around. You can go back or forward, up, down. Let your arms be loose with them. Keep the shake going a little bit more. Those hands and those arms. Now your whole upper back. Be sure to let your knees be soft, you know. Wiggle all the torso. Let your tongue and your mouth be loose. You can make sounds. You can shake your hips forward, backward, side to side, whatever you want. Shake your glutes, let your bum shake out a little bit. And shake your thighs. And shake it all the way down to our toes. You can hold onto a chair or something and shake out your leg, let your knee be loose, but don't let it go too crazy. You don't want to injure it. And then loosen up your ankle and your foot and your toes, shaking your whole leg out. And then that other side from the hips, I'm going to start in the middle again. And my thighs again. Feels so good. And then shaking out, including my knee a little bit, my left leg. And from the hip, trying to get it to mosey around, do its thing.
Mosey around. Stretch your leg to mosey around, people.
And then shaking out my lower leg and my ankles and my calves and letting it all be as loose as possible. Ankle, feet, toes. And then a couple of shakes
Wake up
and
the people
jumps.
in the shop downstairs. Other people in the shop.
Let your arms move around. Kind of dancing without music. All right, and then kind of come into stillness again and notice all the sensations you're able to feel through your body. You don't have to get stuck still. You can still sway or move or stretch or whatever your body needs. Ultimately, landing in your foundation, your feet again. Still being loose, still letting things go. Your jaw, your throat, your chest, your shoulders, your knees. Notice the sensations. Connecting with your breath again, just naturally, without trying to do anything. Except maybe slowing down your exhale a tiny bit more than your inhale. And sighing. See if you can get the vibration through your whole body on your next exhale. Sigh aloud. All the way down to your toes. All right. How are you feeling? What are you more aware of now than you were before, Dan?
How much of my body is made of fluid, and that's not just because I had a smoothie before I came. But when I stop, I can still feel like it's swaying. It feels like a small tidal pool or something. Sometimes when I stop moving after doing all that.
Mm.
And then I also became aware that my right knee was bothering me, but in my brain, my left knee is the problem one. And then I remembered something that one of my teachers taught me, and I'm like, oh, my left knee might be hurting, but it's because it's compensating for something my right side isn't doing. So I can tend to both. And it's never,
Right.
there's never a part of it that's in isolation,
Right.
right? It's always in relationship. And is it the one that's doing, is it the extra support work that it's doing that's making it hurt, or does it need to be strengthened? And so it's not always that it needs to be strengthened. It can also be that the other knee needs to be strengthened, or the other leg,
Yeah.
so that it kind of does more of its fair share and takes some of the burden off the left side that way. So that
Yeah.
was kind of a neat, because I was like, oh, that's weird that I feel that in that right knee, because that's the feeling I usually get in my left knee. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
that's because I have to actually strengthen that right side and strengthen and ease the way it moves.
Yeah.
It's not just,
Yeah.
I don't have to make it rigid. I'm not going to like put a cast on it. It's not that.
Right.
It's more about helping it get the support it needs so that the left side can rely on it.
Right. And then there's also more balance
And then there's
and
more
an
balance.
ease on both sides.
Yeah, because
right?
walking needs both of them.
It does. It's hard to manage otherwise, and
Yeah.
such a gift to be able to move
Oh,
freely.
oh, yes. So grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, today, what are we going to play with today? I had a couple of thoughts, and even though we're partners in so many things and we spend a lot of time together, a lot of that time is involved planning lots of things, but not always what we're going to do here. And so it's always pretty impromptu what's going on here, which I like.
I
You can
kind of
never
feel like
know
it's your
exactly.
show, so I don't even suggest planning it because it's your thing.
Right.
So I
right.
never suggest that we plan it, because I'm like, whatever Gabrielle wants to do, she'll give me some hints or tips. And I know that you're so full of creative ideas. I mean, when all is said and done, one of the reasons you've thrived is because you're creative, resourceful, and resilient,
Hmm.
right? So it's
Thank you.
like,
It's true.
yeah. So
I'll take that in.
Yeah.
Want to repeat that?
well, one of the
please.
reasons that you're thriving is because you're creative and you're resourceful and you're resilient.
Hmm.
So you can kind of rise to whatever life throws at you.
Mhm.
And you were telling me one of the reasons for the show is to be able to have an alternate to that mode and have a regularly scheduled thing, you know,
Right.
right?
Where I've committed to showing up each week.
Yeah.
And the showing up each week is the thing.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily having all the content that follows figured
Right.
out and planned, because a lot of things happen in a week. And like you said, there's so many projects, so many ideas,
Right.
so many things that can come up.
And a lot of artists and creative types have there's also a component that's like the rebellious portion of them, you know,
Mhm.
and it's like, don't hold me to a schedule, you know. I'm not getting up at 8 a.m, you know. I'm not commuting, you know, whatever it is, like that's
Right.
not me. I'm free and creative, and you know, that's awesome.
Well, there are a lot of people who think those things and either, are in a position where they can have a little more of that
Yeah.
fly by the seat of your pants going on, and
Yeah.
others that need to be at a certain place at a certain time. And
Yeah.
by those days were, I had many years like that.
I think it was a book I read called Gödel, Escher, Bach, and they talked about the importance of knowing your own self and what routines and what patterns light you up and help you do your best work. And that one of the early researchers in chaos theory was, and I might be confusing two books, worked at AT&T's Bell Labs, which is one of the better think tanks for innovation out in the desert. And he learned early in his life that he was a night owl. So he would be walking around this deserted town full of government workers and AT&T workers are all doing a 9 to 5, kind of like the Flintstones, you know, the whistle blows and they all rush home and have dinner.
Yeah.
And then it blows in the morning and they all come to work. And he'd be walking around at 3 or 4 in the morning, just walking through town thinking, because that's how he thought best.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Right.
so
In motion.
yeah.
Yeah.
And at night,
Yeah.
like that was
Yeah.
his time. So for him to do anything different wouldn't be in integrity or help him achieve his superpowers and live his full life.
Right. Yeah.
It made it difficult to socialize with him, I heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because we sort of have that dynamic as well, because like I'm happiest when I'm in my own space and I'm on my own time frame and I can eat breakfast at 2 and lunch at 5 or whatever it is. Work until 3 in the morning and sleep until 9. Like that's for me the best time for
Yeah.
working, because there are no interruptions and it's just so fluid. No one's
Yeah.
gonna call me up or stop by or whatever.
Right. And my eyeballs wake up between 5 and 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
So
And then you get up and then you're pretty much ready. You're ready to be off the work clock and the thinking clock by 9-ish
by
usually.
9-ish, I'm usually ready to be like, I wonder what dream I'm going to have when I close my eyes in 2 seconds.
But you'll stay up usually till
I do stay
11
up.
or midnight or so.
I don't want to miss anything.
FOMO, oh my God. What am I going to miss out on? Yeah, so it's really interesting to have that dynamic, but also the importance of knowing that. I appreciate you mentioning that. And it took me a while I've known that all along since I was a kid, actually, that I was a night owl. But what took me a long time to get to is acknowledging that that's the way I am and that is where my best work is, instead of making it wrong or like, oh, I need to adapt. I need to be like everybody else who gets up early and makes all these changes in the world and in their own lives and stuff like that. And I have tried that out and it has worked at times for sure. And sometimes it's a lot of fun, especially if it's like a focused period of time that I'm doing that. Yeah, I found over and over again, anytime that I'm left to my own devices, I am up till 3 or 4 in the morning. And then eventually I go to sleep. Sometimes when the sun is coming up, when the birds are coming out, when it's starting to get light and I'm like, uh-oh, might be a little hard to fall asleep, but it's never really hard for me to fall asleep. And I'm not up all night because I can't sleep. I'm up all night because I have exciting things that I'm working on. So I love that. I think that's a signature aspect of thriving, is like knowing what your clock is, knowing when your best time is to work and to connect and to do different types of work, Yeah, I think that can go a long way, knowing those things.
Yeah, I agree.
My brain is like putting in all these pieces, like, yeah, like at this time of sleepy cognizant level, I really like working on like a spreadsheet thing where it's like I just need to enter stuff in. I don't need to be really thinking creatively or critically about a thing. I just get to drop stuff in, right? And that kind of work I love doing when I'm not at 100%, full throttle mode with ideas.
I just had a conversation yesterday with someone, and we have a project where I've got 300 names, and I have to go look up data points for each one of those names and add it into another column.
Oh,
but
wow,
there's
yeah.
300 of them.
That's a job.
So the first job is find out where I get that other data point. That's one part of the project already in progress. But then it's basically, once I get that data point, I said, well, it's just a tea project. It's going to be like grab a cup of tea and sit down and just go bum, 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 bum. It's 3.7. Type it in. Next one, search. Da, 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 da. That's a 4.2. Type it in and
Wow.
just chunk through the things. It's not a brainiac task. It's a sit down with a beverage of your choice and spend an hour and a half or 2 hours doing this activity. So I think of that as like, I call it a beer task or a tea task. It's like,
Right.
it has to be done. It's going to take my time, but it's not going to require much thinking. I might listen to a podcast at the same time,
yeah.
or music.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of nice having projects like that for that time, for that kind of time zone, right? Like
Yeah.
being able to.
Yeah. But what would be
Listen.
bad is if I did it at 10 in the morning when I could be at the top of my game, talking to people
Yeah.
live, boom, like, let's go it. I'm thinking, I'm on game, boom, boom, boom. oh, I have to do this. I gotta
Right,
tell
that's
you,
like,
I'll get
no.
to 11 at the most,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna really be thinking about the other things I'd rather do. So that's like a good 5 o'clock in the afternoon is what I'm saying. Like there's some
Mm.
tests that are good for me at 5 in the afternoon, and then I can go do dinner and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So, do you have any things that you want to talk about in particular?
Do
Any,
I?
yeah, any surprises or states of mind things? I mean, we're kind of talking about our routines and schedules.
Yeah. Well, I noticed
We could talk
something.
about that if
I-
you want.
I mentioned it to you earlier today. I had an experience. It may have well have been with you, and I journal. So I journal every morning. One of my things this month is I set up a July challenge. I'm going to write 750 words every morning. Have done it so far, and what's nice about it is that on many of them I've hit 1,000 or more, just because
Oh,
I'm
that's
like,
great. Yeah.
I don't have to stop when the confetti falls down from my screen, because
Yeah.
yes, I use 750words.com. And
Me too.
I learned touch typing in high school, which don't talk to me about, because I swear I probably cursed the teacher, wished her dead, cursed my parents for making me take it, cursed the school for making it a requirement. And I'm so grateful that I can do it. So, I type and I think, and it's stream of consciousness journaling. And I brought up whatever the incident was, and I honestly don't remember exactly what it was, but I think something happened in our relationship. You said or did something, and it sent me off internally. I went internal and responded as if it wasn't you and me having a situation. It was like a thing from my past relationship. And it worked out, and I became aware of it, and everything is fine. And so while I'm journaling about it, in my head, my words in my head are saying, oh, that really triggered me in such and such a way. So I can capture that.
Uh-huh.
But what my fingers wrote was that triggered a memory for me, and then I stopped when I realized I
Yeah.
wrote something different than I thought, because usually it's really close. I can get
Right.
pretty fast from here to fingers to screen. And it made me just stop and think, like, did it trigger a memory for me? It's not the way I think about triggers. Triggers I think of as the kind of things that just set me off. Or as a friend of mine said this morning, that you get triggered and you're off to the races. Right?
Uh-huh.
There's no stopping you now.
Right.
But there is something that happens in between, whatever that thing is that we call a trigger, and our reaction. And in this case, it was that it didn't trigger me to behave a certain way. It triggered a memory. The memory triggered a feeling, and the feeling triggered my behaviors and my activities. So there's actually like 3 steps between the thing that happened, the triggering event, and my response to it. And all of a sudden I became aware, oh, there's places I could stop and not have that automated response. I don't have to have that emotional response. I don't have to have the reaction to my emotional response, right? So it's like
The suffering.
yeah.
You
A simple example would be a really good friend of mine who's never done this before sent me an article in the mail, right? He had called me up and said, what's your address? Because we haven't been in each other's homes. I gave it to him, didn't even ask him why. An envelope comes, and it's a folded up article from the New York Times. An envelope comes, folded up article from the New York Times. And I opened it with kind of like, oh, shit. Because that was my father's way of showing love. His way of showing love, not my way of receiving love. His way of showing it was finding something interesting, going, oh, Dan would really love this, putting it in an envelope and sending it to me. Sometimes when I was at college and beyond and married and with kids, I'd get big envelopes filled with articles, right? So it's like having these days it'd be like a curated news feed.
From your father?
But it'd be coming from my father.
Wow.
So it came to me as like this obligation and an imposition. Now I have to think about what he's thinking about, read these articles,
What's he saying about me? What's he saying indirectly? Is he saying something about me?
Right.
Yeah.
It was really usually intellectually or emotionally oriented. You'd send me the Science Times, you'd send me, there was great stuff. I still have some lying around, envelopes filled with articles that I might not have ever read because they just got shoved in a pile.
Right.
So this triggered that memory, and I started to like, oh my gosh, there was a part of my brain that went, oh, do I have to start to think about JK as like my dad? Like that doesn't make any sense. So like, right. So, but I actually put it aside, and it
Uh-huh.
took me 3 days before I opened the envelopes. Well, I'd opened them
Wow.
before I
Yeah,
looked
yeah, yeah.
again, and I read them yesterday. I made it a point yesterday after my journaling. I said, I'm gonna go read and find out
Right, to
what,
sort of separate yourself from the
yeah.
emotional immediate reaction
And
to
I changed
receiving
it
it.
to like, oh,
And
you
then
know
be
what?
like,
I
"No, I'm
wonder what
curious."
JK thinks I would think is interesting.
Right. Yeah.
And guess what it was? An article about the art fair in London that they just held for the first time in 2 years.
Oh,
That was
wow.
bought by the company that does the Art Basel.
Oh, really?
Yep. So it was really
Oh,
interesting.
interesting. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
brought it with me
Oh, good.
because, anybody
Fabulous.
that loves somebody else brings some articles to read.
Now we have a new context, right?
So I don't know if this is on my mind today because this is, in the last 24 hours, this idea of triggers and and making a distance between an event and my
Yeah.
reaction to it and my reaction to my reaction.
Yeah, I love that you talked about that. I may have shared it on the show already, but if I don't know which episode, if I did, it reminds me of one time when I was with another person and I was in the middle of saying something and they realized what time it was and that they needed to get to the co-op right away, which was like next door. And they just basically cut me off and started for the door, right? Without saying anything. And like anyone who knows me, I'm not a fan of being interrupted because that also comes from a childhood thing. My mother would interrupt me mid-sentence. Would you go get me a pack of cigarettes? Would you go get me a Diet Coke? Like, not even like, I'm sorry, excuse me, could you wait a second?
Right.
I need something first.
And not even healthy
right?
things like, would you take the baby out of the oven? Well, I mean, maybe not the baby, the bread.
Yeah, the bread. Yeah. So
I interrupted you.
Yes. Nice face.
Thanks.
Anyway, so what happened for me in that moment, and did not happen just now, if you notice, basically steam started coming out of my ears, and I went into this like frozen rage state, and I was so tight, like my chest was so tight and everything else. And he immediately, like I was turning into a monster. And the person like looked at me and was like, oh my God, what's going on? I was like, actually, it really doesn't have to do with you. It just happened because of something you just did. And I can see that this is actually a big, huge response to a very big old thing. And that it isn't this incident. Right. It's not really about this incident.
It's not this incident. It's not this person.
Right. It's like this whole lifetime.
Off to the races.
Yeah, off to the races, So that was great. It's really helpful. And I noticed that too a lot in the beginning of our relationship too, when I would have like sort of knee-jerk responses or fears or whatever things that would come up and then try to become aware of it, like, oh, I'm having this response. What am I angry about? What am I upset about?
I think the interruption one came up.
Yeah.
I come from a family of interrupters, so it's not an easy one for me.
Right.
But I think you very clearly expressed it early, and you've had to remind me a couple of times. But you expressed it really clearly. This is a thing that really bothers me.
Yeah.
You might have said, I really hate it when.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But you made it not about me. You made it about you and a reaction that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me the opportunity to choose to be on the lookout for that behavior or tendency on my part when I'm with someone that I care about so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I noticed that you do make an effort, and that's been amazing. And what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. I think just that it's not such a big deal. Oh, I know what it was. I noticed also that I interrupt quite a bit as well. Right? So whatever the thing is that bothers me most, I reluctantly have learned that it often has to do with the same thing that I myself am guilty of.
Have you
Not always, but
have you
often.
done that exercise? All right.
Yes. You're pointing at? I'm pointing at you, accusing you of something, but there are three fingers pointing back at me. So I'm
Yeah.
just as guilty or more so.
Yeah, well, so that would be,
Right.
that's a good embodied way. And then I
Yeah.
knew a verbal way too, which is to say, if I were to say to someone in my household, God, I really hate it when you leave dirty dishes in the sink, because then I can't, like if I'm cooking, I can't come into that sink and use it for what it's intended to do. And then I say, oh God, I really hate it when I leave dirty dishes in the sink, because then when they go to the sink, I can't put stuff in it. It's like, oh,
Putting yourself in there as well.
you just change it. I really hate
Mm.
it when Sophia leaves dirty dishes in the sink, right? So that's a thing. That's a
Right.
feeling
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
thing I have.
yeah,
I go,
me too,
"Well,
with
I
myself."
really hate it when I leave dirty dishes in the sink and I don't have access to the sink. And just
Mm.
changing it and realizing as soon as I say it, from my experience, as soon as I say me, put me in there, I realize two things. One, I do it.
Uh-huh. Like there's truth to that.
I do. It's instantaneous.
Yeah.
There's not even like a, do I ever do that? It's like instantaneously, oh, I do that. And
Yeah.
I do hate it when I do
Right,
that.
right.
And
It
I'm bringing
becomes
something else over to it. And if I'm doing it, can I be forgiving of myself and other people that do it too? And can I find
Right.
ways for us to both maybe not do it if that's still important to me? But it changes the main thing is it changes my emotion
Mm.
when I just make the same statement, but make it about me.
Yeah.
I really hate it when people take up like 1.5 parking spots because they park poorly, right? I really hate it when I come outside and realize I took up 1.5 parking spots because I wasn't paying any attention.
Right, right. So then you can have a little more compassion for the other person, and it's
Yeah.
not always like other people, other people, other people.
Right.
But it's like, oh, maybe a little more compassion for all of us because we all make mistakes. And how
Yeah.
could I be better, or can I be better before expecting someone else to be better?
Yeah, and when people would tell me to be more compassionate, or could I be more compassionate, I used to think it was a thing I had to do. But when I do this process I just described,
Mm.
I'm not doing compassion. Compassion
Right.
just comes
Right.
because I am the other person. If I have a complaint about another person and I test it out to see if I have the same complaint about myself, then
Mhm.
me and the other person are the same.
Right.
And so animosity drops away, othering drops away.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say maybe that's called compassion also.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a few different tools that we've relied on. We've talked about a few habits that we've become aware of and either celebrate and lean into, or recognize when they show up and adjust if we want to unlearn that. Do you have any other things you're unlearning right now?
Unlearning?
Yeah. I think about unlearning a lot.
Give me an example, please, from your own life.
Okay, I am quickly trying to come up with something because I wasn't ready for this one. I can think of questions, but I don't always think of answers. All right, I
Can you
am
think about something you're
unlearning.
unlearning in your life right now?
Yes, I am unlearning the conditioned use of genders and trying to guess what a person's gender is by looking at them. I am unlearning.
That's a pretty big thing.
Yes, it's a very big thing.
You're going to add more to it. You're just going to bring up gender.
I was going to try to
and
bring
go,
other
oh, and here's 3 other things I'm
examples
unlearning while
of
I'm at
things
it.
I'm unlearning
I'm
and
learning
learning.
That I don't have to wipe the handle of the shopping cart when I go shopping.
Yeah.
And gender. Those 2 things I'm unlearning at the same time.
So I give you an example. What about you?
Well, I wanted to talk more about your gendering one.
Well, we
That was
can do
interesting.
that.
I can talk about it from the perspective of sometimes I unlearn in steps. I'm a little bit nerdy. So what I've been doing is there's an element of predatory and
That's it.
of prey or predation and objectification. that I engage in gender identification of others. Right? I'm just stating it. It's a thing. You know? Evaluating other people as potential lovers or combatants. Right?
Friend or foe.
Friend or foe. Yeah. Can I take that person? Can they take me? You know, let's say I
This
see.
is a condition like, why would you think those things? Like you grew up having to know this on a day-to-day basis for survival?
So I've made observations over my life about some gender differences, and now I'm challenged to speak of them. So if I use genders, I'll be using them from the context of American society, 1960 to 2022, right? Traditional gender roles. So guys do things like there's the guy nod on the street. When you see other guys, you don't look and slide your eyes away. You look and give a nod that I saw you. And it's not that you necessarily get in trouble if you don't do that, but it's kind of a thing. You just give the nod. Somewhere in that nod is also each guy is making an assessment. If we were on the playground, who would win? Right? It's not.
Yeah.
It's taught. You learn it early. And it's not spoken of. I don't know anybody else that talks about it, but anytime I do talk about it with other guys, they'll acknowledge it. Usually, yeah. Is he bigger than me? Is he faster than me? If we had to fight, who would win? It's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
And then with women, it's also like, oh, are they attractive? Should I flirt with them? I'm a flirter. You probably never noticed that. You noticed?
I noticed.
Okay.
You flirted with me and here we are.
Sometimes I'm a good flirter. Sometimes my flirting gets me into a relationship. Oh.
Who would have guessed? Oh my God. Not always the intent.
Holy success, Batman. So on the trip I took across the country with 200 women on motorcycles, some of the dear friends I made there, I remember speaking with one of them and saying, and I just asked because we were casual, we're walking in Zion National Park, lots of people, an attractive woman walked by, and I asked her, do you notice attractive women? Like, what's that like to be, and I really didn't know, what's it like to be in a lesbian monogamous married relationship? Do you still notice other women? And she was very nice to me and said, it's difficult to unlearn objectification. I was like, that's not what I asked her. I didn't objectify them. I was just,
exposed.
So, yeah. And you know what? That was 2016. I still think about that on a very regular basis. I try to just think, is what I'm doing now in my head objectification? So one of the ways
we have millions, sorry to interrupt, but we have millions of moments in a day's time to question that. Yeah. Like I'm looking at this photo, I'm looking at this ad, I'm looking at the story, I'm looking at the thing,
Right. So I just allow myself to be in the question sometimes rather than just, I don't have to have the answer. I can allow it to be a question.
And that's a step in the unlearning, right? Like becoming
That's
aware.
what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
It's like the gap between the event and the response.
Right.
Oh, there can be a question here. Why did I just run that process in my head that's so fast and automatic? So that's what I mean. And then the other thing I sometimes consciously do when I start to find myself wondering about someone's gender, which is not my business, other than to know if it's going to be a potential lover or a potential combatant. And even that goes out the window now with
gender doesn't determine that for you or for anyone.
For open trisexuality, do you know what trisexuality is?
No.
That's how try anything sexual once.
Oh.
So you're trisexual if you're willing to try stuff.
Try anything.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay. TRY, not TRI.
Yeah. So what I will do is look at people and then I wonder if they look more like their father or their mother. Just that. So it's just kind of maybe I'm weird that I do that, but I'll just do that. I'll look at people and think, they're striking or they're unusual. I'm like, I wonder if they look more like their mother or more like their father. And then it starts to get kind of blurry in there.
It can get messy right away
It gets
because
almost
for
immediately.
so many reasons. They might not have a mother and father.
Well, biologically, I guess is what I'm thinking. But
They can have, fathers are birthing babies now. Fathers, a male presenting human or trans man can give birth and several have given birth to babies, right? So one would think you're looking at a man.
yes, I get it. But
Right.
they have ovaries and a uterus
Yeah, and they're
and a
able to
vaginal
deliver
canal, and
babies.
they can deliver
Yeah,
babies.
so bearded baby delivery
Vehicles.
humans are pretty freaking amazing in my book. They're like total heroes to me. I think that's incredibly awesome. So
You just pushed me past my limit.
So
For Dan.
poor Dan, I'm sorry. We'll have a talk about it later. But so like when I just noticed that, so this may be an unlearning as well related to the gender thing. It's like anytime I'm faced with someone using, male or female or father or mother, the two typical gender things, brother. And also I was in a group recently with all people who have ovaries, but not all identify as women. And so it kept coming up that we were being called sisterhood. And I was like, that just doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't feel right. And two other non-binary members of the group were also like, I don't know if I can stick around for this because it just feels so uncomfortable every time. It's like you're trying to throw a dress on me, or, make me be a certain way or be seen as a certain way. And so finally we're like, well, what if we just come up with siblinghood? One of our non-binary people said, I feel really great in siblinghood communities. And if you're all game, that would be awesome. And I was like, oh, hallelujah. I never would have thought of that. And I love it. And it just makes it so much easier for me. So unlearning those things of saying, sisterhood, motherhood, fatherhood, all those things, because it's changing so much. We have
But are
all this
fatherhood and
history and
motherhood,
experiences.
or mother and father, is there still the sexual, biological provider of sperm and provider of egg? Or are those concepts, those straight up pure biological concepts, out the window? What's the story?
What's the question though? Like,
Well, it started
Are
off
you
by me saying,
attaching
I
it
look
to
at people
sperm
and
and
think, do they
father?
look more like
Are
a
you
mother
saying
or a
that?
father?
yeah.
Which is clearly just my dodge to get around masculine or feminine, right? Although with people that I know, I always found that fascinating with people I knew, and I've had kids, and so I've been around lots of kids and gotten to know their parents, and you can very clearly see, oh, little Amy looks a lot more like her father, Bill, than she looks like her mother, Jill,
Yeah.
right? Like
And
that's,
so what does that mean?
it doesn't mean anything. It's just a way of noticing how characteristics get handed down. And I was
Instead
using
of
father,
making an
mother.
assumption about
Right.
what that means for their gender?
Oh, yeah, no,
Is that what you
not
mean?
related to
Got it.
gender,
Okay.
more just related to how
Features.
genes are expressed in that individual.
Yeah.
And where I was going to go was to say that that's a step for me to then go away from gender identity of the child
Mm-hmm.
or the human. So I can sort of think they probably have more of their father's features here. That strong jawline looks like it might have come from their father's side of the family. It's all make believe, right? Because there's a lot of very strong jawed women in
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a step, a leg up or a leg towards that for me. And now that you've brought up this other component of it, that the mother and father may or may not be known, and the mother or father may or may not have ovaries or testicles, right? And then I was just getting curious about it, but in the biology of it, there's still a sperm provider and an egg provider for a human baby to be conceived.
As far as I know, that's still true. But they could come up with some artificial thing at any moment and probably already have. I don't know. It's imminent, I'm sure. if it's not
And
already
so
been.
then what?
So then it could be a totally, what would you say if it's a non-binary human? That is, or an
But which?
asexual human that is providing some of the magic sauce for a baby to be created.
I guess you could just, if you're just gonna go biological, that was the sperm provider, that person was the sperm provider, and that person carried the fetus. Provided, then that person
Eggs.
can, well, no, you could
No.
be all three. I can have a
Right.
sperm provider, an egg provider, and a fetus
And a
carrier,
Right, true.
right? I
True,
can
true,
have all
true.
three of those roles and multiple, and one person could provide multiples. If you allow the variable of time in there, then a person could harvest eggs or sperm. Probably they'd have to harvest eggs to, and then,
We're getting pretty granular here.
yeah. Oh, yeah, right. All right, I'm gonna
Can we
stop.
change?
But we're talking about identity and societal relationships and power dynamics. Even if you don't say you're talking about power dynamics, it's always about power dynamics.
Yeah, I guess in the way that you look at it, but what are you doing?
Because I'm like, oh, can of worms. I could
Another
be,
can
I
of
could be
worms.
eating worms here.
Yeah. But anyway, as you can, yeah, and as we've talked about, even in our queer competency certification program that we did with Embody Emerge, there's so much that we typically haven't considered or been exposed to ideas and you know, around sexuality, around gender, around biology, around anatomy, about transitions, about hormones, about all the different things. And once anyone does choose to learn about that, there is a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn. And in that case, there was a lot of unlearning. That's where I'm thinking a lot about. The biggest unlearning for me
Oh,
is
got it.
changing the expectation, not just how I say things like men do this and women do that. It's like, it's so not useful to me to use those examples. And I find them offensive. And I know though that that's rare still. Like there are a lot of people that would be offended by my being offended by the binary
Well, it's
usage,
a-
like
it's a-
limiting things
it's a-
to binary.
It's an issue. I mean, I am in 3 men's groups,
Yeah.
right? You know, and not a one of them would anybody want a non-man identifying person to attend.
Mhm. But would they welcome a trans man?
Sure. And a man that I know a person that I know that I was in men's groups with in the past is now is a woman, is a
Mhm.
trans woman,
Mhm.
and asked once or mentioned once that they kind of missed the men's meetings and wondered if they could come. And I said, I don't think so.
Mm,
You know,
right. That's
if you are a woman, then you would not be coming to a men's group.
yeah. Yeah. And I could see how the longing or missing of something that you were able to identify with so strongly. Now, also, we learned that gender is always fluid. So this person who was in your men's group previously and now is presenting
She
and
could come.
identifying
She
as
could come to it if she felt like she was a.
she's non-binary. It's challenging. Gonna think on that some more. Okay.
I think the interesting part about what we're talking about is we're saying the rules can be broken and new rules can be formed, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, we're also talking about how people support one another in their identity and how
Right.
having a shared identity is a way to gain support. And
Mhm.
it's vital. I mean, I'm in groups where men need these groups to survive,
Mhm.
you know, quite literally.
Yeah.
So So there's something tied up in that identity as brothers in the group, as men in the group.
Yeah.
And so this is the thing, I'm not sure I'm unlearning it. I'm open to the question. I'm open to living in the question,
Yeah.
which is how does that play into a world where things become more fluid? And my, probably wrong answer out of the top of my head is what would make sense is for there to be support groups for any identity
Mhm.
and every identity, and a safe place. That term is overused a little bit, but it's still valid. A place where people can feel safe in their identity, whatever
Mhm.
that identity is, and that
Mhm.
often means people with a similar identity. So whether it's because you go to
Well, you can be
Sex Addicts Anonymous or
right.
men's
So it could be
group.
topic-based, not necessarily gender-based. So, parents of
Single
addicts
parents, no,
or single
widows,
parents or
widows and
widows, yeah.
widowers. And there's widows
So
groups and
any
there's
gender would
widower
be
groups
welcome
and
in
there's
those
widows and
groups.
widower groups.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So,
But no, even in the realm of grief for lost spouses,
mhm.
I'm in some, but the better ones are widow and widowers group that I think is better um, because widows are more likely to participate because sometimes that gender is more willing to do community than the other gender, which is called widowers.
Mhm.
So it's a larger group if it's widows and widowers. Widowers groups
How
get to
can
be
you
pretty
be in it
small.
though? In the widow group?
Widow and widowers. I cannot join a widows only
Oh,
group.
okay, good. I got it.
So
So
I
you
can
have one
join.
that's both.
I can
widows
join a
and
widowers group or a widows and widowers group.
Yeah, got it. Well, anyway, this is a lot of stuff to talk about
And
to
then we
go
touched
into.
on grief, because grief for widows and widowers, but also grief for trans folks in their old life
Yeah,
and the parents of trans people and the child that they lost to get the child that they have.
right. Those are big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just cover that. I got about 45
Support.
seconds to do that.
No, we're not covering it. Well, the crux of what you're saying is that support groups are essential or a really important part of people's healings and people's ongoing capacity to exist and even thrive in the
Right.
world. And so
And then
how do we create these groups that support the part that needs supporting, right? So we talked about how we have the gender groups, so like women groups, men groups, blah, 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 all the things. And then there are also these topic-based ones. So grief or widow, spousal grief,
widower, you can say co-ed
co-ed
grieving
groups, right,
spouse groups.
Yeah, exactly. So,
And it's the same in our blueprint training, right? Even on the platforms that we use to be with others in community, we have the ability to break off into the shapeshifter cohort, the energetic cohort, the kinky cohort, the sensual cohort, right?
mhm.
Or the energetic cohort. We have that ability so identity is super important
And fluid.
and fluid, and we move through them, which is why everybody talks about liminality all the time, because there's these times when you're in between even identities.
I guess what I wanted to say, like the really important part is that to remember that there's never only two things.
Never only two things. That's why I formed the Matrix Club Against Dichotomies at Cornell University when I was a student there.
Did you really? Are
Yeah.
you making that up?
Nope, the Matrix Club Against Dichotomies. We were funded by the Student Union Group. We had regular meetings.
We should revive that group.
It's a good group, but one of the things that we did is whenever a professor especially stated a dichotomy in class as part of their teaching, they had to stand up and scream, dichotomy, dichotomy, nah, 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 nah,
Really?
because all dichotomies are false. Yes, that was the purpose of the club. That was our stated mission.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good. So look, we're talking about binary dichotomy, same word,
Yeah,
two things. There's never only two things.
right.
Look, there's either two things or there's not just two things.
Yeah. All right. I don't have the energy to
I'm sorry.
continue with the argument here.
Well, here's the
So-
thing.
Wrap
the-
this up, Ruderman.
All right, you ready? You ready, Senza? All that talk, it's a little bit, it's challenging. There's binary, non-binary, there's what's identity. What the thing is we're trying. Why? Because we care. And no matter how it goes, we can make mistakes, we can repair,
Mhm.
and then we can always come back, find our feet. Mine are back here someplace. There they are.
You're probably not going to be heard very
We
well.
can always
all
come
the way
back and
there.
find our feet, whether it's a tripod, two tripods, or two rectangles on the ground, and settle in and ground and return so that we can be in a place that we can thrive from. We can come from our centers.
Which is always a good place to come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting it ramble on. That was a lot that we covered. How does it tie back to thriving?
It's all part of thriving. It's all part of thriving.
Embrace the mess.
Embrace the mess. Yeah. Like if you want to get into it more and work with one or the other of us, you could always check out our website at pleasurefirstcoaching.com. I think that's one of them.
That's good.
And or if you wanted to reach out to me, you can go to morepleasureplease.com, and we can always get into more of this. So thank you for watching today, and we'll be back next Tuesday at 2. We'll see you then.